So you finally decided that you were ready to get pigs. Maybe you started with chickens and now you're ready to raise pigs for meat on your farm or your homestead. The big decision, right? What breed are we going to get? What breed is going to represent our farm, going to give us the best genetics and also have the best personality, the best meat quality, the best of everything? And you're looking around on YouTube, maybe you're on Facebook forums and groups, you're asking questions, what breed should I get? And you get a lot of answers that all conflict with each other, and you're trying to make sense with it. I'm Steven from Rowan Ridge Farm. I breed heritage hogs on pasture, and I am trying to share a little bit of what I've learned throughout that process with you guys to save you some time, save you some money, and help you enjoy what you're doing with your farm. Invariably, what you find is breed zealots who will say, this brand is the best and everything else is absolute trash. You'll find the people who say, oh, get any kind of Yorkshire or Duroc, but everything else is trash. Don't get any of those lard pigs. I'm here to tell you today there is no such thing as a lard breed. There are people who do not understand how to feed different breeds of pigs. And as a result, those pigs that are fed wrong develop in a way that is not consistent with what you're looking for. So you have three basic categories of pigs. You have the industrial breeds like Yorkshires and Durocs. Those have been bred for years and years to put on massive amounts of muscle that's going to convert into your bacon and your pork chops at the store with grain and lots of it. And those animals, they can go to market weight around 250, 275 pretty easily in 6 months and change. Then you have heritage hogs that are older breeds that mostly come from Europe, England and Ireland specifically. Like you got Berkshires, you have Tamworths, you have Gloucester Old Spots. This is not comprehensive. There's a variety of different breeds. Some of them have kind of gotten lost in the shuffle. And so those of us who raise heritage breeds, which is what I raise, Tamworths and Gloucester Old Spots are my main focus. I am starting to mix in some Berkshires as well and experiment with that breed. But the reason why I raise purebred Tams is because I like that breed, and they also are somewhat endangered because they are not strictly an industrial breed. And so those genetics are only kept alive by small farmers who think that it's quaint enough to invest their time and money on it. But then you have this third group of pigs that I like to call artisan breeds. And those are animals that take longer to finish and can be like up to 14, 18 months before you can get them to the butcher at market weight. And these animals tend to be better suited for homesteaders that are doing a more survivalist type of thing. And certain of these artisan breeds, they have super high meat quality when they are bred and raised correctly. Now, a lot of people call those artisan breeds like Mangalitsa, Mulefoot, Ossabaw, American Guinea Hog, Coonies. People call them lard pigs. Idaho pasture pigs would go in that category. And some people even include Gloucester Old Spots in this as well. They call these lard pigs. If you feed a Mangalitsa hog the same way that you feed a Duroc hog that is meant to finish on 6 months on nothing but grain, and you give that same diet to a Mangalitsa, yeah, it's going to put on a bunch of fat, because these artisan breeds were bred at a time where lard was as valuable as the meat. The meat was good and you made your hams and your bacon and all the rest of that stuff, but lard was used for everything else. So when you had a pig that had a bunch of fat and could put fat on easily when you put the grain to it, that was considered very desirable and that was valuable to have that. And the way the pigs were raised, you didn't go down to Tractor Supply and get a bag of 16% hog grower. Back in the 1800s, those animals were on the pasture and they were rooting around and maybe eating scraps from your dinner table or some eggs or some leftover milk. That's what they were eating when they're spring piglets. They're eating that all the way up until late in the summer when they've got like a month or two until they go to the butcher. And then at that point, the corn harvest comes in, they chop up the corn, and now it's time to grain the pigs, and they go from being 150 pounds or so at 6 months of age. And in those last 2 months, they're gaining 3, 4, 5 pounds a day, just grain. And that's putting fat in a little bit of muscle, but that's finishing them out. And that's very different from the way that most of us are feeding our animals today, where we can give them a consistent diet of formulated, nutritionally balanced hog feed that wasn't available at that time. So these are animals that work really good for more of a survivalist type of setup, where you just want to be self-sufficient and you want to know that if the feed mill stops running, that your animals are still going to be able to survive and they're going to be able to grow, and you'll be able to have something to put in your freezer at the end of the year. Now, if you are raising animals to sell to other people, they might not be so generously predisposed to animals that take 14, 16 months to grow out, because most people want to buy their animals sooner. And so the commercial value of those artisan breeds, incorrectly known as lard breeds, those are animals that you have to have the right market for them. So I'm here to tell you that the breed doesn't matter as much as the things that are not baked into the cake, the things that you can control, the environment in which you raise the pigs, the way you socialize them and spend time with them in terms of their personality, and then the nuts and bolts of breeding, which is to take the raw ingredients of a breed and then to select for the best qualities and then cull everything that doesn't fit into that. And that's the hardest part of breeding, and that's something that I'm still getting up to being able to do well, because you get attached to these animals and sometimes it's a pain in the ass to get rid of an animal. Even if they've let you down, you just say, you know what, maybe I'll give them one more chance because I don't feel like butchering a pig right now and I got all this other stuff going on. And so you let them, give them one more opportunity. But the reality is that Berkshire pork, the Kurobota pork as they call it in Japan, which is a specific bloodline of Berkshire hogs, the Wagyu of pork, it is sometimes called, although I also see Mangalitsa being called Wagyu of pork. I have not eaten Berkshire pork yet, so I can't comment on that. I have eaten Mangalitsa pork. I wouldn't call it the Wagyu of pork, however. And that's not to say that Mangalitsa is not a good tasting pig or that there's anything wrong with the breed or you shouldn't get it. The point is, getting that breed doesn't give you the result that you want. It takes time to then select for the characteristics within that breed and to distill those characteristics into a line of animals that are going to consistently give you those same qualities. And there's many different qualities that you can select for, but that is the work of a breeder. So if there was one piece of advice I would give you, aside from just clearing the air that there are no lard pigs, there are only people who don't know how to feed old-fashioned hogs that grow slowly and should not be given as much grain as the industrial breeds, I would want to tell you to select for the breeder who is doing that work and is excited about that breed of animals, and they are putting that time and effort to making better and better and better generations of the animals that they are raising, rather than thinking that if I just buy Berkshire, I'm going to get great quality meat, or if I just buy Duroc, they're going to grow fast, or if I just buy Mangalitsa, that I'm not going to have to feed them any grain. Because if you have that idea in mind, you're probably going to wind up being somewhat disappointed. Buy for the breeder, don't buy for the breed specifically. If there is a breed that appeals to you for whatever reason, even if it's not purely rational, go with it. Find somebody who is a really good, highly rated, reputable breeder and find them, work with them, find somebody that you can talk to that will be a mentor to you that you can keep coming back to. And lastly, to close this out, do not overlook crossbred hogs or hybrids, because the reality is if you cross two purebred hogs, this is called an F1 hybrid, you get a hardier, faster growing animal, even if it's a cross between two slower growing parents that are purebreds. I cross my Tamworths with my Gloucester Old Spots, and neither of them are super fast growers, especially the Old Spots. They're a little slower. They're like 8 to 9 months to finish them. The Tams, they're like 7 to 8. But when I cross them, I get an animal that has some of the better meat characteristics. They have the length of the Tamworth. I like my pork a little bit on the fattier side with better intramuscular distribution of fat. And I get some of that by crossing the Tamworth with the Old Spot. And then you wind up getting an animal that's also more hardened off to disease, better survivability, can deal with adversity better. So the idea that a purebred animal is going to be better if you're just raising pigs for meat, I don't think that stands to reason at all. If anything, a purebred animal makes sense if you are looking to do breeding, but if you're just looking for pork to fill your freezer, the best option is going to be a hybrid that is a cross between two purebred parents that have each come from lines that have been selected for the best qualities. And then you take that animal, and with that 20% of the picture that's baked into the cake with the genetic makeup, you then follow that on with the 80%, which is the environment that you raise them in, the time you spend with them, the way you socialize them, the forage you provide them with, And then you wind up, at the end of the day, you wind up with a good animal that feeds you and that you like and that you're happy to eat, but sad to see go at the same time. And that's successful. I realize I may have touched on some topics that provoke the ire of certain people. Feel free to let me know in the comments if you think I forgot something or if I got some of this wrong. Everybody's mileage is going to vary, but this is what my experience has shown from the time that I spent breeding pigs. I would love to have you subscribe to this channel so that we can keep this conversation going and make America farmers again as we build this community right here with the next video coming out. Subscribe, and we'll be talking soon.